Good afternoon, everybody, on a snowy winter day in Rouse's Point. We're in the Rouse's Point Library, and we're looking at the John Ross room, his collection. And in here we see Dr. Alan Everett, and he is signing some of his books called Point of Fair. And there's been, I've seen at least 10 sold in and out so far, and he was starting about 2 o'clock. It's 2:20. I'm Bob Venn. The program's called What's Going On Here. Calvin Castine on the camera. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Everett a little bit later, and maybe some other people here, and just see what this is all about and find out more about the book and how the Zerlos were involved. We'll be right back. This semi-smiling gentleman next to me is Dr. Alan Everett, and if you haven't met him, that's why we're here, because we're at the Ross Library, and he's been signing autographing books called The Point of Fair on Lake Champlain by Alan S. Everett, but it is Dr. Everett, Plattsburgh State University. For how many years, Doc?
36.
36.
But
Had to be something with history. You're out now.
Yeah.
Well, no, don't say you're out. It sounds like you've been released or something.
Well,
like a prisoner.
They didn't mind seeing me walk away.
They didn't? All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit about Point of Fair, and that's what he's up here for, to sign these books on this snowy day at the Ross Library, John Putnam Ross Room in the Dodge Library on Lake Street in Rouse's Point.
There,
Dr. Everett, or Everest. I want to say Everett, so much as I say. Where are you from? Where were you born? Are you native up in this area?
Just across the lake in Vermont.
Where?
Addison.
Addison.
Well, my hometown is New Haven, but the Everests came to Addison before the Revolution. And I had 2 ancestors that were in the Green Mountain Boys, famous in the Revolution.
Absolutely.
But I've never applied for the DAR.
You never applied for the DAR?
No.
Tell me, were they also historians like yourself? Were they interested in history? They weren't.
Not particularly, no.
Okay, so you were raised in Vermont?
I went to college in Burlington.
UVM?
Yeah. And then 2 degrees from Columbia. But World War II came between the degrees. I got drafted before Pearl Harbor.
Drafted before? I didn't know they were drafting before the war, yes?
1 year, and supposed to be a turnover, but they'd get people trained just in case.
Uh-huh.
But I'd been in 4 months, and the bombs dropped on Pearl Harbor.
Were you Navy or Army?
Army, Air Force.
Air Force, all right, yes.
Before there was an independent Air Force.
And then you came back afterward, and you got your other degrees afterward? You got your your doctorate afterward?
Yeah.
And then when did you come to Plattsburgh? Was that your first school that you taught at?
Well, I taught at junior college in Vermont before the war, but this was what I came to right out of the Army almost, or Air Force, in 1947.
About the same time the Champlain College came to Plattsburgh. Just about that time, right? About the same time, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I came to the what was then Teachers College.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed names several times since then.
Yeah. You must have liked it. You stayed there to the bitter end. 36 years, you said? Huh?
36 years. Whose end are you talking about?
Tell me, if you're going to be more wise than I am here, it's going to make it tough on me. You come up with more remarks than I've got.
Well, you ask questions. They call for snappy.
How many students would you teach in a given year, approximately? Would you say?
Well, my last few years, I was teaching each semester about 150. Classes had gotten pretty large.
In each semester, so that'd be 300 a year.
Yeah.
And you're talking 36 years, so like you're talking maybe...
well, those were the later years.
Yes, but you could be 5,000 students, different?
Oh, I think so.
All of that have either learned or come under your tutelage, what should I say?
Well,
one or the other?
Some of them even admit it.
You know, we we've seen you down at the auction or the flea markets they have there for the Clinton County Historical Society in Trinity Park in front of City Hall for the last 10 or more years, I guess. And everyone knows you, I'm sure, in the area. Your picture's been in the paper. You've written many, many books. And you've made a lot of impact on a lot of lives that people have enjoyed history. Were you a friend of our benefactor here, John Ross?
I certainly was. He was Jack to me. I think he was to everybody, for that matter.
You know, I've known him many times. I worked with him. I've never called him Jack. I always called him John. I don't know why. I know a lot of people called him Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew him well. He was on the board of the historical for quite a long time, and overlapping some of the years I was. And he was on the Crown Point Foundation for years, and so was I.
Uh-huh. All right. Now, we don't know much about books, but let's say this Point of Fair, which you're here to sign, and they're selling them today for $8.95. And if you don't have one of these, they can be picked up at the Historical Society's office at 48 Court Street in Plattsburgh, the corner of Brinkerhoff. Oak, I should say. I keep wanting to say Brinkerhoff.
Oak and Court.
Oak and Court. And it's the story of Point of Fair, just out here at Kings Bay. And we know that this was underwritten, the finances came from Eugene and John Zerlo, who asked you to write this book. Is that where it came about?
A little more indirectly. They appealed to John Zerlo is on the county board and legislature.
Right.
And he asked Bingle for ideas of who might do it. And Mr. Bingle talked to Helen Allen of the historical, and she called me, would I be interested? And I didn't even have to take a deep breath. I said, yes. And that's how it all got going.
About how long ago was that?
Well, last fall, really.
You mean of 92?
Yeah. I didn't know about it until after the middle of July.
All right. So then you decide you're going to write a book on Point of Fair. Have you any idea at the time how big it will be or how many pages you're going to write? What does a writer do? He said, I'm going to write all I can, or just the interesting things that I can write?
Well, I think I prefer to write a complete, and if that's brief, okay, but at least it isn't padded.
Okay.
Anybody would spot if you tried to stretch 20 pages into 50.
Uh-huh.
No, you publish wherever you stop.
Okay, now when you're going to write a book like this, it isn't like you're going to go talk to my relatives and write a book on the Vens. You can't go out to Point of Fair and look for some papers on the side of the road that will give you the history. Where do you start on a thing like that? When you're writing a book, just give me an idea, basic. Don't give me all your secrets, but where would you start in something like that?
Special collections at the college in Plattsburgh is always a good place.
And that's at the State University.
State University, and I found there a marvelous notebook that Hugh McClellan had put together and labeled it Point of Fair. And I got most of one whole section of the book right there. But I went to Fort Ticonderoga to their new big library. I came right here, and Mrs. O'Boyle came up with some awfully helpful things. I wrote to Ottawa, to the Canadian Archives. You go wherever you sniff the air that might have something helpful. And as often as not, it doesn't. But you got to hit all bases.
Okay. While we're circling the bases, we'll take a time out right here from this ball game, and we got someone in here to buy a book, and we're not going to prevent anybody from buying a book from Dr. Alan Everett, our guest here at the Ross Memorial room in the Dodge Memorial Library, Rouse's Point. Be right back. You're watching What's Going On here. Bob Vinn, Dr. Everett. Well, we had a double break there. The second person in was Jean Ward. I guess you won't mind if I use her name. She lives out on Point of Fair and seems to be very interested in reading your story about her property out there.
She may not like what she reads.
Well, I gave her your home address and telephone number. So if you,
I've talked with her.
okay, well then, if she calls you again, you won't mind.
No,
All right.
of course not.
All right. On a subject like this with your book, now I was told when I bought one the other day, and I had you sign it here today, whether I buy it here or buy it there, that the proceeds are going to the Historical Society. Now, is this a donation on your part that you do this, or do you get a certain fee, or do you rather not talk about that?
Oh, I'd rather than to have people think I'm pocketing all this money. No, every penny of it goes to the Historical Association. I don't get and didn't expect to get when I undertook to write it.
Is that the same in some of your other books, or are those more or less your own projects, with your own chances you take, so to speak?
Well, some of them were my own, like the rum across the border.
Mm-hmm.
You go and hunt for your own publisher. But there have been others. The Pliny Moore was published by the Historical Association, and they get all the income from it, but of course they had to pay for the publication first.
Mm-hmm.
And with this book, the Zerlos were taking care of the costs. So it's practically clear income to the historical, but not to me.
Right. Well, of course, you've got to be very proud to see your name on these books like this. It's a great honor. I feel like I'm privileged here to be sitting and talking to you, and I'm serious about that. Because I can't write like this. You know, I can sit and talk like this, mm-hmm. and I donate my time here. I'm not getting anything for this. I shouldn't say money. I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm getting a chance to talk to you, one-to-one here on a TV, and people out there can know you.
Well, I haven't sent you my bill.
Well, I hope you put a return address, because I like to return them without opening it when I get bills like that.
Oh. Well, I'll hand it to you before you leave today.
All right. How many books have you written? I'm going to just reach around here to grab one of them. You've written numerous books.
Well, 15.
15. Oh, look. We showed some of them to you people last week when we were down at the museum. Rum Across the Border. The Battle of Plattsburgh, or 1812.
Well, the War of 1812.
War of 1812.
In the Champlain Valley.
Right.
I've seen that on the shelf here somewhere.
Yep. Then these are two, I think, of the most well-known, maybe because we don't have to read this, but we can look at a lot of pictures. The Pioneer Homes of Clinton County, 1790, 1820. Alan S. Everett. What's the S for? Samuel?
Seymour.
Seymour. That's your mother's maiden name?
No, it was my grandfather's first name.
Okay. And this is the, I always say this wrong, Dewey Inn or Dewey Tavern. Dewey Tavern right here on corner 276 and Prospect Hill, owned by Mr. and Mrs. Louis Bedar right now. And it doesn't look like this anymore. They've really fixed it up outside, and I think there's 12 or up to 12 to 18 rooms in this house, formerly owned by my uncle, Martha and Peter Castine, years ago. Mm-hmm. And inside of this book are many throughout the county, various towns of the. This is the parking lot behind the government center on Court Street, where Atwater was.
Both of those are gone, and that one is gone.
It's kind of too bad, isn't it?
Oh.
Particularly to you, it must make you feel terrible to see things like that.
I began to get superstitious that all it required was for me to put it in a book and
but you did very well with this one.
Yes.
The 48 Court Street, the home of the Clinton County Historical Society now. The benefactors on that, of course, Mrs. James Fitzpatrick. family.
Right.
And there's many of these. If you haven't seen this one is out of print.
No, it isn't.
This one is still in print. Can be purchased at the other one called the Colonial Homes or
No, Buildings Worth Preserving in Clinton and Essex counties.
that's the newer book. I think he got that title after seeing that 3 on this page out of 4 were no longer there. He figured he'd remind them by saying buildings worth preserving.
Yeah, but even in that one,
They're going, huh?
some of them have gone.
Yes. So get those pictures while you can, right? Get those pictures of those homes and places. Years ago, well, about 4 years ago, Calvin stopped in after church one morning. He said, Bob, you got some time? The last day of 1989 or 90, Calvin?
89.
In 89, and we got in the car, and I drove, and it was a slushy, raining, the last day of the year, and he took his camera, and we drove around for 4 hours, just taking videos up and down the streets and roads of the village of Rouse's Point, Champlain, and the in between, for preservation. And many of those buildings are burned, like the Savoy. The Anchorage, it's gone. It's gone. We had that at the time, and we got places that have been built up in the vacant lots. It's never been shown on TV yet. He's still saving that, but history, I think, is very, very important. And all right, so you've written 2 of these, and you can you think of some of the other names that I wasn't familiar with 15 of them, but
Well, I even count my
all
dissertation that I published way back. That was the first one, actually. Oh, let me see. I've done the Pliny Moore
yes,
biography
right.
and a biography of Alexander Macomb, who was the general at the Battle of Plattsburgh.
We talked about him the other day when we were in the museum. His picture's in there.
I did a quarter of the county pictorial history, wrote it, and I did some other things with it. I don't know. I'd need a list.
Oh, you need a list. All right. Well, anyway, you can find these out if you go down to the Clinton County Historical Society. Most of them are available there?
Not most.
No?
A lot of them out of print.
Out of print. That means you can't get them anymore, right?
Right.
All right. Was your mother, I often think about our moms, was your mother alive when you were writing these books? And what did she think she was? She was long gone at that time?
Yes, she's been gone since 1941.
Okay. You know, you'd like to think that your mother or your dad would see. They said, you'd never go to amount to everything, Hal. Remember that? When they used to tell us
Yes.
that? And you can look at the book. That's my name. Look at that. Where have you got your name on a book or something? But how many were there in your family?
Just a brother and me.
What, did he get into education and teaching or history at all?
No, he carried on my father's grocery store and post office,
Okay.
and is still alive.
Well, we're just about exhausted, I guess, and what we can talk about as far as anything you want to think of?
Just mention what I know what Rum Across the Border is. And
Okay.
I know what Pliny Moore is.
All right, let's just talk a little bit about Rum Across the Border. What made you think of that, and what's it about? As if we don't know up here in the northern New York tier, but tell us about Rum Across the Border.
Well, I ran all around the place with a tape recorder and got anybody who would to talk to me. And I got on tape customs people, immigration people, state police, a judge in Plattsburgh, 1 or 2 lawyers, and just ordinary bystanders who saw a lot of it. And then I read a lot of newspapers of the day. I covered 13 years of the Plattsburgh Republican every day, and had those all accumulated as notes, and then began to put it all together. It made a nice book. It was the story of rum running from 1920 to 1933.
I once quoted at we had a village fest, and we had some we had a little historical question that was asking. And one of the questions I asked was, what was the biggest occupation in the 20s? And the town of Champlain, and it was rum running. There was more people involved in that than anything else, I guess.
Probably true here too,
Right? Yes. Yeah.
in Rouse's
Yeah.
Point.
And of course, it was very well known. This whole area was very well known downstate. They used to come up from Albany and below to go to the Meridian just across the border into Canada. And when I mentioned that I was traveling, that I was from Champlain, they said, "Oh, you live very close to the Meridian," you know. And it's surprising how many people came up here during that time just to go have some fun in Canada, just across the border.
I caught up one nice story about the Meridian in the book. The town supervisor, I suppose, sent the town plow across to open up the way, and he fell through into the cesspool.
Yeah, that's a I think
Famous one.
Yeah, there's a picture. Did you have a picture of that? I've seen a picture of that incident. There's a picture of that somewhere that I had seen where they backed up. Of course, they weren't supposed to be up there plowing, but I guess they probably got paid in liquid refreshments, probably. And of course, an awful lot of people use that Oak Street and the Oak Street extension out into the Meridian. All right, and then your Plenty More. Now, of course, Plenty More, the founder, at least the English founder, at least, of Champlain. I guess Asselin was there nearly as early as Plenty More was.
Who?
A man by the name of Asselin, which would be Ashline.
Oh,
Asselin was the first French person in that area of Champlain. And I think he was even there before More, I've heard.
well, I think so. He was part of that Canadian Nova Scotia
Exactly.
refugee
Right.
tract. And, yeah.
And that whole story, if you haven't got it, and there's another that you should have, and like I recommended before, we were at the museum. If you don't know whether you want to buy one, stop to the library and look at it, and then I'm sure you're going to go down and buy it. And then you bring right up to date to the McClellans, how the McClellans were related to the Moors along the way, and the whole story is right in there.
Right, it is.
I often thought someone ought to write a history of the town of Champlain or the village of Champlain. Peg has done something, wrote a book on the village of Rouse's Point, but the village of Champlain and the town of Champlain, as far as I know, do not have a book as such, and it's time that we get into something like that. I'm getting pointed at here by our keeper of the John Ross room, Mrs. O'Boyle, pointing at me, but I'm not a writer. My wife says I'm a talker. I don't say much, but she says I talk a lot. Yeah, right there we see Mrs. O'Boyle. You ever think about that?
No, I hadn't thought about
You hadn't thought about it, huh? We've talked to Celine Paquette, and she's got it half in the back of her mind. And we've also been toying with the Larry Gooley, I think. He's written one on the Flat Rock at Altona. But something should be done because there's a lot of history up here, as you know. You found so much history. You're doing it by segments, Plenty More and Point of Fair, and that's there's not that big for the whole place here.
Right.
Did you know Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes, I
In
did.
Shazy, who wrote this book. That's a beautiful book in Shazy.
Well, she wrote it with David Martin,
Okay.
but it's tremendous. It's the most complete town history I know of.
Is that right? We're going to be talking with David Martin next week about genealogy and his trip to China. We'll be talking to him on the 20th, so you keep watching our programs here on Sunday. That'll be coming up. And, of course, I took a genealogy course with him for several weeks down at the Feinberg Library a few years ago. Helped me find a few things anyway. He couldn't find it for me, but he set me in the right path.
Good enough. It's all in
Okay.
the door.
Anything else you want to talk about, Dr. Everest?
I wrote the Plenty More book. I promised Woody, when he was dying from cancer, that I would do it if it was the last thing I did. So in a way, it was carrying out a promise to him. I don't know that he was pleased, but anyway, I did it. I mean, I told him, and then afterward I did it.
He never saw. He wasn't alive when the book was finalized. No, he'd been gone. You know, I don't know if there's anybody in the county or northern New York that contributed more to the history of our community than the McClellans. You know, all the communities and what they've given to the Feinberg Library.
Oh,
Huh?
my, yes.
And let me tell you, there's reams and reams of it. Correct?
Well, I used that
Yep.
in the writing. Well, it turns up helpful even in the writing of Point of Fair.
But they had so much, and I guess we didn't realize what we had when they were alive right here in Champlain. You sometimes don't appreciate people. They don't appreciate me. A pleasure. Anything else you want to tell us about that Plenty More book? No?
No, I think I've yacked long enough.
Okay, well, I appreciate you talking with us. We do have another thing I've had in the back of my mind for some time, and I've talked to Dr. Everest about it, and that is, this is not going to be a day or two project. I want to take every picture that he has in this book that have to do with either the town of Moores, Chazy, or Champlain. Our viewing area of Hometown Cable, talk to him about these books, take a photograph of this picture, and read what he wrote about it, and then go today to that location and give you a 1 or 2 minute dissertation of who's there now and what has happened since he wrote this book in the 60s. I want to do that for both of his books, but it's a long process, but of course, we'll have his permission to do it, to quote and to get these pictures. Where did you get all these pictures? Did you take all these yourself?
Yes, I
You
did.
took all of these, huh? So this can be a year or two project right here.
Well, I think it was for me. Between taking all the pictures and getting them developed and so on. The other one, which is out of print, covered 2 counties, so that I had to make some pretty long days to go to Scroon Lake and arrange that the sun was facing a building on the way down and facing the other way for a building on the way back. Make a big
Yeah.
swing way into the south end of. Then 3 whole rolls that I'd done all this with got spoiled in the developing. That's something like, let's see, 3, I think 48 prints.
Wow.
Do them all over again.
Well, of course, the developer does tell you he will remit the value of the film. They do give you back your $3.29 or something, but the time and the effort that you have gone to that, and you went out and did them again.
Oh, I had to. Yep.
Well, it's amazing, and there's a little bit about the problems of. Here's some of the indication of the ones that are in this book. That's where he went, all the way down here from Clintonville right up to the border and over to Moores. And if you haven't seen this book, you can get these in the library. Or at least stop in here and look at it. And you may find your own home in here. We were looking at some today in here, and it's called The Pioneer Homes of Clinton County, and the other one is Architecture Worth Preserving.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Building.
Buildings worth preserving. Right.
To get into this book, it had to have been built before 1820. That was the only catch. And there are 178 in there.
Now, are you telling me that, I mean, you haven't really told me this, I'm going to ask you though, have you got all the homes in this area that were built before 1820 that were still in at that time? Did you have them all, or did you think you had them all?
I thought I had them
Okay,
all.
in other words, it's hard to determine which ones were that old to find out.
Well, I've found 2 or 3 cents that should be in there and aren't, but most of it is.
Okay. You know, another thing, I just had just before Christmas, someone gave me a book on a thick book on the story of Beekman Town, written by White, maybe, or some Wilson or White.
White.
And he's not from this area.
No.
Do you know how that book ever developed? Have you any idea?
He's at the University of Texas, and I think for his doctoral degree, he edited the Beekman papers, and they were an influential New York company of merchants. And he worked so long in their papers that he got interested in the colony they'd established up here. So one thing led to another, and he was up around here quite often. But He's not from around here at all.
No, I know. That's what surprised me. And I said I haven't read the book yet. I just got it, but it's how things happen. And we just happened to be here with Dr. Alan Everest at the Ross Room, the John Ross Room in the Dodge Memorial Library. The program's called What's Going On Here. I'm Bob Venn. This is Dr. Everest. It's been a pleasure talking with you, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure, too.
Very much. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable. Well, we're following up a little bit on Point of Fair on Lake Champlain by Dr. Alan Everest with one of the Zerlos, because it's because of the Zerlos that this took place. John Zerlo, we've talked to him before. You've seen him on Hometown Cable many times. Our legislator, our teacher, our former tax collector, Mr. Everything here in sports. And how are you, John?
But it's nice to be with you when it's a fun thing, not politics or not school. This is a fun thing.
It's a fun thing? You don't know what it's going to be yet.
Well, I know it's only 5 minutes because we both have places to be and go. So
we're in between ball games at the Northeastern Clinton Central. They're playing Ticonderoga, and it's 5:30, and Calvin's got to get back to the ball game. Okay, tell us, John, the reason where you want to talk to you for a little bit is how did this come about, and what is the Zerlo's part in this, and what did you do personally?
Well, let's see. Of course, my brother and I were both born here. My parents came from New York City in 1935. My father was transferred up here to be the superintendent and later on became the vice president and general manager of the Sheridan Iron Works and later Harris. And of course, my father was gone. He retired before AMI took over. But that's how he came up here, and they came up as a young married couple, and my brother and I were born here and made it our lives. And my brother went to, as he thinks, greener pastures, but I think the green pastures are right here. But that's another thing. That's another story.
Yeah, but you mentioned that you were born here, so it is a long, long time ago.
It's long time ago.
Your father came here.
Almost as long as you've been here.
Right.
But that was 35 when he did come. My brother has always been a historical buff. As a little boy, he used to read history, and he was very interested in the origin of things and how they came to be. And of course, to speed this up, 1978, my brother and I together bought the Wally Willette property on Point of Fair. And we've been summering there ever since. I think that's what, 14th, was it our 14th year last summer? I believe it was. And over the years, my brother always asked, what is the history behind this area? Is it Point of Fire? Is it iron? It was all kinds of questions in his mind. Finally, 2 years ago, he got a little bit more adamant about this, and he said, gee, can't you do anything? And of course, at that time, I got more heavily involved in politics, taking on a county position. And at my disposal was the county administrator, Mr. Bingle, and of course Helen Allen, the director of the Historical Association. And that came to mind, but I didn't do much about it until last summer when he really put the pressure on me. He says, can't you get some information? Who can do this for us? Who can write a nice book about Point of Fair? So anyway, I then did pursue it because I knew he really meant business, and he was willing to finance this, and I said, well, all right. So I did pursue it. I saw Mr. Bingle, and Mr. Bingle put me in touch with Helen Allen. Helen Allen got in touch with, of course, Dr. Alan Everest, who had done the Rum Across the Border and the Piney Moore book that you know about. And by the time we got to speak, my brother and I and his wife and my wife, by the time we got down to the Historical Association to speak with Dr. Everest and Mrs. Allen, Alan had 2 or 3 chapters finished already. He was really into this. And when he heard that there was a possibility of a Point of Fair book, he really got into it and did a splendid job, as you know. And that's how it was. And my brother paid for the majority of it. I contributed some financially, not nearly what he did. And I contributed my time. I spent quite a few hours with Dr. Everest, lining him up with people that he could interview, the people at Point of Fair, people that were at Point of Fair years ago, the Rochesters being a name that comes to mind. And of course the Rochesters are back at Point of Fair with Danny building a beautiful home down in the Bay side. And had several visits with him, introduced him to the Sotheby's, who owns most of the Rochester estate. That was the Frank Rochester estate years ago. And that's how I got involved in it. And I had to look over several of the chapters that deal with current history to make sure the spellings were right for Dr. Everest, and I was glad to do it. And as such, I had met Dr. Everest, but never had such a close working relationship with him. And I just admire the man, a super fellow, and so with Helen Allen too. I had known her. But getting to work with her in regard to the book, she's just a wonderful lady. And how things come around. Her husband, Derek Allen, who I didn't even realize was her husband, and I met them at a kind of a county function a year or two ago, and there's Derek Allen. He's the fellow that sold and rented, I shouldn't say sold, he rented the ice. He's director of the ice facility, not only the ice facility, the facility, the grounds at SUNY Plattsburgh, a big job. And his department used to rent the ice. And when I was very active in youth hockey, before we had the Rouse's Point Civic Center, we used to rent all our ice in Plattsburgh, either at SUNY Plattsburgh, at the Stafford Arena, or at the Crate Center. And Dr. Derek Allen was the fellow that we had to sign the contracts with in order to get the ice.
You know, I don't really have lockjaw. I just happened to ask the right question, and I haven't done another thing since we started. Now, if we ever got John and John Southwick at the same time, I wouldn't have anything to do. John, that was great. And what is this St. Michael's College? Who are you wearing that for?
Well, this is a Christmas present. I'm wearing it for myself. This is my alma mater, class of 1960, and very, very proud of it.
Very good.
And had opportunity to visit the campus, as we were discussing earlier. My mother is now recuperating from open heart surgery, the second time in 7 months. And that was all done in Burlington, and I had the opportunity to be in Burlington. She's doing great. She's post-oping at my house, and she's just an amazing woman, tough as grit.
Great.
So being in Burlington, I went over and looked at my alma mater again. Quite a change from when I was there. But
I'm sure. Yeah, particularly the girls.
they have girls now.
Girls now. You didn't
That
have,
certainly
you didn't
doesn't
have
hurt. That certainly doesn't hurt. We had to go to Trinity. That's where I found my wife.
What was in Trinity at college?
Trinity
of course.
College.
Yeah.
That's still a girls' school in
Yeah,
Burlington.
yeah. Don't they have boys too?
Only girls.
No. Well, my daughter, Sue, started there.
Yes, that's
one
right,
year, and then
yeah.
she went down to Geneseo. All right. Well, is there anything else, John, you want to tell us about? Is it worked out well with you as far as you're concerned?
Oh, it's great, and my brother is so pleased with it. And the only thing I would like to tell the viewing audience of Hometown Cable, pick one up. They're I think $8.95. If you're not a member, I think it's $7.95. If you are a member of the Clinton County Historical Association, and you can get them at the Historical Association. You can park in the county parking lot because this Court Street, 48 Court Street, is right next to the county parking lot behind the Government Center, and we're trying to get a couple of locations in the northern tier, maybe one in Rouse's Point and one in Champlain that would, keep a dozen or 15 of these books on hand and make it easier for people to buy them. But if you're a northern tier resident or any area of the county, especially the northern tier, you'd want to read the Point Affair book. It's great. It tells the history of the point. There's a lot of history here, and tells what's happening to it now. And Dr. Everest did a wonderful job, and we're very pleased.
And if you don't want to contribute to the Zerlos, don't worry about it. You won't be, because none of that is going to the Zerlos. It's all going to the Clinton County Historical Society.
That's right. This is also a boon to the Clinton County Historical Association because they do reap all of the financial benefits from it. And I'm sure that with moving into their new quarters, they could use any little help that they can muster up, and I'm sure this will give them a little boost.
Okay, we'll just take a short break. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable. We're just going to be a minute or so. We're looking at a picture that's on page 49 of the Point Affair book, and there's a little story about this, John, that you didn't know about, but you now know. Tell us.
Well, the picture, if you read the inscription below, or the explanation below the picture, it says, on October 10th, 1930, the DAR, Daughters of American Revolution, erected a flagpole and dedicated a plaque on the site of a burial ground of soldiers who died at Point Affair. Okay, this picture came to mind the other day when I received a letter in the mail from Edith Karen, who was former resident of Champlain and daughter of Ralph Lewis. Remember Ralph Lewis from the hardware store and the farm and so on and so forth. She wrote me a note, and she said that she saw my picture in the paper with Dr. Everest, and she says, I'm glad to see that you're sponsoring this book. She says, in 1930, I was at the dedication of that flagpole at Point of Fair. And she says, I can remember Mamie Scales there with a nice fancy coat on and a scarf thrown around her neck. And I said, my goodness, that rings a bell. And I went to the book and I opened it up, and on page 49, that picture of Mamie just dedicating that flagpole with a scarf around her neck and that coat, and there's little children in the background. And we figure Edith probably was 12 or 13 years old at the time, and one of those children are her.
And she has not seen it.
She has not seen it. She wrote to me she would like to buy some books.
Just a little sidelight that we thought that we should at least bring to your attention. We're going to a ball game. Thank you very much for watching Hometown Cable. And any comments you have about this or any other program are always welcome. Call Calvin or I. And if you really want to talk to somebody, give John a call. He'll talk to you. Bob Ned, John Zerlo, Jr.